Some wounds don't bleed on the outside. They live deep inside your chest, quiet, invisible, suffocating. And for a long time, I didn't even realize I was bleeding at all. I thought what I was feeling was just grief. I thought I was just broken by loss. My name is Serena, and if you had seen me 3 years ago, you would have seen a woman unraveling. My mother had just passed, Eleanor, the most gentle, most giving soul I have ever known. She spent 40 years of her life raising 4 children, working 2 jobs, and somehow still making Sunday dinners feel like a holiday. She was our anchor. She was mine. When she died, she left behind a modest house and a small amount of savings. It wasn't a fortune, but it was hers. Every cent of it earned through dignity and sacrifice. And in her will, written clearly, witnessed legally, she had chosen to leave the majority of it to me. Not because I was her favorite, she didn't believe in favorites, but because I was the one who had been there. I was the one who drove her to chemotherapy every week for 2 years. I was the one who sat beside her bed on the nights she couldn't sleep, holding her hand, reading to her. I was the one who gave up promotions, moved back home, and quietly rearranged my entire life so she wouldn't have to face her illness alone. My brother, Douglas, 5 years older, 4 cities away, had a different story. He visited twice during those 2 years. Twice. Once on Christmas and once 2 weeks before she passed, when the doctors told us it was almost time. I remember standing in that hospital corridor, watching him cry, and feeling something cold move through me. Not anger, not then, just distance, like we were strangers who happened to share blood. After the funeral, Douglas barely spoke to me. I assumed it was grief. I gave him space. I gave him time. What I didn't know was that he was spending that time meeting with an attorney. The letter arrived on a Tuesday morning. I remember exactly what I was doing. I was sitting at my kitchen table, still in my bathrobe, drinking chamomile tea and trying to decide what to do with my mother's jewelry box. The return address on the envelope made my stomach drop. It was a legal notice. Douglas was contesting the will. I read it 3 times. Then I set it down. Then I picked it up and read it again. The words blurred. My hands were shaking. He was claiming, in formal legal language, that our mother had not been of sound mind when she signed the will, that she had been manipulated, that the changes she made in the final months of her life were not truly her own choices. He was, in the most polished legal terms possible, calling me a thief. I want you to understand something. I have never, in my entire life, taken something that wasn't mine, not even as a child. My mother raised me to believe that integrity was the only thing no one could take from you. And now, my own brother, with her barely cold in the ground, was standing in a courtroom and telling strangers that I had stolen from her. But what I didn't know that day was that Douglas had made one catastrophic mistake, a mistake that would undo him completely. The months leading up to the hearing were the loneliest of my life. I had lost my mother. I had lost my brother, or rather, I had lost the version of him I believed in, and now I was losing my peace. Every morning I woke up with a weight on my chest that felt physical. Some days I couldn't get out of bed until noon. I would lie there, staring at the ceiling, running through memories, asking myself if I had done something wrong, if somehow, somewhere, I had misunderstood everything. My attorney, a calm and careful woman named Patricia, kept reminding me to focus on the facts. The will was properly executed, 2 witnesses, a notary. My mother had also written a personal letter, handwritten, signed, explaining her wishes and her reasons. She had done everything right. Patricia told me the case was strong. But Douglas had something I didn't expect. A witness. A neighbor, A woman named Mrs. Pierce, who had known our family for 30 years, agreed to testify on his behalf. She claimed she had seen me pressuring my mother on multiple occasions, that she had witnessed arguments, that she had heard my mother sound afraid. I was devastated, not just because it wasn't true, but because I couldn't understand why someone who had watched me care for my mother, who had waved to us from across the fence, who had brought over casseroles and get-well cards, could stand up and say those things. Later, I would learn that Douglas had been sending Mrs. Pierce money, monthly payments, small enough to seem like kindness, large enough to matter. He had been building his case quietly for months while I was still grieving. The hearing began on a gray October morning. I sat at the plaintiff's table with Patricia, wearing the navy dress my mother had bought me for my college graduation. I wore it deliberately. I wanted to feel her close to me. Douglas walked in with his attorney, an expensive one, the kind who carries a leather briefcase and looks at you like you're already defeated. Douglas himself didn't look at me, not once. He kept his jaw set, his eyes forward. He looked like a man who had already won. And then the judge walked in, and I felt the air change. I recognized her immediately. The Honorable Judge Margaret Osei. She had been a family friend, not a close one, but a real one. She and my mother had served together on the board of a local literacy charity for nearly a decade. They had shared lunches, laughed together, attended each other's events. My mother used to speak of her with such admiration. Judge Osei saw me, and for just one moment, less than a second, something moved across her face. Not favoritism, not sentimentality, something quieter. Recognition. Douglas's attorney immediately approached the bench. He had recognized her too, and he moved to have her recused, removed from the case on the grounds of personal connection. Judge Osei listened patiently. Then she spoke. My acquaintance with the late Eleanor was professional and civic in nature. I have reviewed the case file, and I see no conflict that would impair my impartiality. Motion denied. We will proceed. Douglas finally looked at me then, for the first time all morning, and I saw it, just beneath his composed surface, the first flicker of something he hadn't planned for. Fear. Until that moment, I had been surviving, but sitting in that courtroom, watching his certainty crack just slightly at the edges, something shifted inside me. The grief was still there. It never leaves. But underneath it, something steadier had appeared, something my mother would have recognized immediately. She always called it spine. The testimony that followed was methodical, clinical, and at times devastating. Douglas's attorney painted me as a controlling daughter who had isolated my mother and manipulated her in her most vulnerable state. Mrs. Pierce took the stand and delivered her testimony in a trembling voice that I think she believed sounded credible. She described things she claimed to have witnessed: arguments, tears, a woman who was frightened of her own daughter. Patricia let her finish. Then she stood up, smoothed her jacket, and walked slowly to the witness stand. She asked Mrs. Pierce how many times she had visited Eleanor in the 18 months before her death. Mrs. Pierce paused. "Several times," she said. Patricia then presented the visitor log for my mother's care team, a detailed record kept by the home health nurses that documented every person who entered the home. Mrs. Pierce's name appeared 4 times in 18 months. Mine appeared 412 times. Patricia then asked about the financial arrangements between Mrs. Pierce and Douglas. His attorney objected. Judge Osei allowed the question. The courtroom went very quiet. What came next was something Douglas had not anticipated. My mother had anticipated it for him. In her final weeks, when she was still lucid and clear and more herself than she had been in months, she had done something extraordinary. She had written a video message. With Patricia's help and the presence of a notary and 2 independent witnesses, she had sat in her favorite chair by the window, looked directly into a camera, and spoken. She said that she was of sound mind. She said that she understood exactly what she was doing with her estate. She spoke of me, what I had sacrificed, what I had given, what it had meant to her. And then she said something that broke the entire courtroom open. I am not leaving Serena more because I love her more. I am leaving her more because she showed up every single day. Love, in the end, is not what you feel. It is what you do. And the truth, the real, documented, witnessed truth, always finds a way to stand, no matter who tries to bury it.